So, l'chaim everybody, good evening. I wanted to speak in very, very short about this unbelievable personality that we are talking about in the past few weeks, called no other than Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu is one of these wonders, and besides many, many reasons that Avram is a big, big wonder, one of the biggest wonders that we have, one of the obvious ones, is who is Avram? In other words, if you open the Torah and it starts the third parsha, Lech Lecha, so Hashem reveals himself to Avram and says, well, start going, get on a journey and start walking. But the big question is, who is this Avram? And in fact, what did he do to deserve this type of revelation of Hashem, this type of receiving such a mission? Like, who's Avram? So in the background we have all these midrashim telling us all these stories about, that when he was 3, when he was 40, when he was something. But the fact of the matter, you open the regular, simple Chumash, who was Avram? So Noach, for an example, it says that Noach tried to go on a good path, and he was a righteous person, especially compared to the other people in the generation. So Noach, we could tell, why did Hashem anoint Noach? Why did I point out Noach out of anybody else? But why did Hashem choose Avram? Like, what? Who is this Avram? You open the parsha, the previous part, the one before. So Noach, it says that Avram was born to Terach. Very exciting. And the next thing, that they started traveling. Terach passes away in a place called Haran. And the next pasuk is, Hashem tells Avram, start moving. Who is Avram? What did he do? Why did Avram deserve this special attention of Hashem telling him, appointing him, and telling him, you should be the head of this new nation that I'm establishing? What did Avram do in his lifetime that really made him deserve such a thing? Okay. So, I was thinking a lot about this. Actually, two things bothered me about Avram, about the story of Avram. First of all, why doesn't it say that he deserved to get this thing? Second of all, when Avram starts traveling, it says that he goes with a bunch of people. It says that all the people that they inspired in this place called Haran. It says that Avram inspired the men, and Sarah inspired the women, and they all traveled together. It wasn't just Avram and Sarah walking. There was a lot of people that were inspired. And my question is, where did they disappear to? Where are they? If they're such a great source of inspiration, where all these people are. So these are the two questions that I want to bring out. And obviously, I think the main thing when we talk about these amazing people, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, founders of ourselves, our ancestors, what does it teach us? Like, how do we continue on with life just reading the story of Avram? Like, what does it mean to us having these people as sources of inspiration? So, I actually saw an amazing story, and I think maybe this story could bring out what Avram is all about. 1973, by the Yom Kippur War, there was a soldier, and this soldier was fighting by the Suez Canal, and they were bombed and attacked by the Egyptians, and he was very, very secular. And there was someone there in his unit that was a little bit more traditional. And this person used to put on tefillin every morning. And he used to ask him, like, what's up with the tefillin? He says, this traditional guy, I guess, didn't really know why he's putting on tefillin. But he said, this is something that connects me to God. He straps it in. I tie myself, I feel tied. I feel a bind. I feel a connection to Hashem. That's all I can tell you about. He says, do you really believe in this? He says, listen, if my ancestors and all the generations before believed in it, so I'm not sure exactly what it's all about, but I know when I connect myself, I'm at least connecting myself to their tradition, connecting myself to them, and let them figure it out into more details. And this was always the answer he gave. It never went more deep than that. The depth was This is something that connects me, something that connects me to my ancestors. They're connected to God, and that's my connection. That was the only thing he was able to say. So this soldier was there. As I was saying before, he was very, very secular. Didn't really understand much. But when the bombing started during the war, he was very, very desperate. So he calls out and says, Hashem, this is the deal. If you really exist, I'll make a deal with you. If I'm out of this place, I promise I'm going to start putting on tefillin. I don't know what and how and when, and I don't really understand the whole depth, but I could just tell you that if you're there and you get me out of this, I want to connect to you. So here I'm making the first connection by promise. Get me out of this, and I promise I'll start putting on tefillin. Sure enough, he got injured very, very badly. But when he woke up, he went unconscious. He got injured very, very badly. But when he woke up, eventually, he discovered. Oh wow! Huh? He. איזה חמוד. שייתם. נו, עברתם ברכת כהנים, אה? כולם פה מברכים כהנים. So what did he discover? He discovered after he discovered when he woke up that he was, as I was saying, he was injured very, very badly. And in this whole bombing, he lost his left arm. He lost his left arm. And what really broke him so badly, that he's never going to be able to keep his promise to Hashem. He promised Hashem he's going to put on tefillin if he gets out of this. Yeah, Hashem seems like he heard him, but now he can't keep his side of the deal because he lost his left arm. And he got so depressed. He got depressed about the whole situation, but so much more, like, how could it be that I kept my part of the deal, and like Hashem kept his part of the deal, and I can't keep my part of the deal. Well, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy enough, it wasn't a good enough channel that I opened there, like, what's going on? He got very, very, very upset. It took him about 2.5 years. He's trying to deal with this issue that he had. And eventually he traveled to America. They said, I really think he had a second cousin living in Crown Heights. And this cousin said, I think you should go to Lubavitcher Rebbe, talk to him. Maybe he'll try to find some, some comfort, some hope. He said, there's nothing to lose. He goes to the Rebbe. When he walks into the Rebbe, he starts crying. And he tells the Rebbe, you really, really think that I'm not worthy enough? You really think that this channel that I opened wasn't good enough? Like, how much of a coincidence could this have been that out of anything that I got injured and everything that went right except one thing, the promise that I had with Hashem that I will put on tefillin, I can't put on tefillin, I lost my left arm. He says he picks up his eyes and he sees the Rebbe crying. He tells the Rebbe, I'm really sorry, I hurt your feelings. Did I insult you? Like, why are you crying? So Rebbe says, no. You remind me of Avram Avinu. How do I remind you of Avram Avinu? He says, I think that what Hashem wanted to bring out was that your connection with Him is unconditional. You don't have to have any conditions with Hashem to be connected to Hashem. Your DNA is having a holy soul, of having a Jewish neshama. And that's your DNA. And the fact that you made conditions, I will connect you through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's a later step. But the essence of everything, the basics of everything is what? The basics of everything is that your connection is unconditional. You don't have to do anything in order to connect with Hashem. That's what Hashem wanted to show you. He wanted to show you that He's there. He heard you. He listened to you. And from now on, your connection to Hashem doesn't have to be dependent on anything. That's the next step of doing mitzvahs, of binding, of connecting. That's the next step. But the basics of everything, the essence of everything, is that you and Hashem are one without any beginning conditions. That's the basics. He said that turned everything over. It says everything changed in his life. He understood that the love that he has with Hashem, such a deep, essential love, doesn't have to do with any specific mitzvah that he does. Later on, it inspired him so much. He did many other mitzvahs. He also learned the halacha that if you don't have a left hand, you put on your right arm. Don't worry. He found what to do about it. But the basics is that in the end, the real connection that we have with Hashem is not dependent on anything. It's nice on the next step afterwards to do mitzvahs. We have to do mitzvahs. We have 613 channels to connect with Him. But the real essence, the real basics of everything is not dependent on anything we do. You're either born Jewish, and that's how you continue on with doing life. Not connected to anything. And maybe that's why when the Torah tells us about Avram Avinu, the Torah says the connection of Hashem choosing Avram Avinu wasn't based on any actions of Avram. Later on, Avram had to prove himself. He had 10 really good tests, and he was okay. He accomplished them and successfully accomplished them. Everything was fine. But the basics, in essence, why did Hashem choose Avram? because that was the right thing to do. Because Avram decided, just like we have a color of our eyes, and just like we have the shape of our face, we have our soul that's painted with the color of Hashem, with the color of God. Why? That's what He chose. Just like we can't choose the color of our eyes, just like we can't choose the size of our nose or the format of our ears, we can't choose the color of our soul. And our soul is colored with the color of Hashem, just like that. Not dependent on any preconditions that were done before.
What's it mean, the color of our soul? What's it mean?
Godly soul.
But what does it mean, color?
What does it mean, a color? An essential color?
That could be what does it mean, a color of a soul? Of what color?
The word color? What do you mean?
It's a deep concept.
It's a very
The
deep concept.
Color? What's it mean, the color of a person's soul?
I think it's an essential thing, because that's what you see in it. And then when you look through a soul, you look through a soul of a Jew, you see godliness, if you really are able to remove all the things.
So we could all have blue, green, yellow.
It's one color. It's a godly color. It's beyond colors. It's beyond colors.
Like color, like a shining.
Well, I don't think
white encompasses every color.
It does. That's why it says that Lavan. It says that Lavan was the source of all. Lavan was the father of Yaakov, and that's why Lavan comes the word Lavan, white, and that's why he was the source of all the different factors and all the different channels and all the different things. But I think the idea here is that in the end, there's many types of souls. But the Jewish soul has something to it that you look through a Jewish soul, just like let's say you have a window, right? And the window, it has a blue color. You look through it, everything looks blue, looks red. You look through it, looks red. You look through a Jewish soul, and what you see in the end is pure godliness. That's what you're supposed to see. You're supposed to see. You look through it, and you see godliness. And sometimes you have to remove many layers and many different things that cover up. But in the end, you look through a soul, and that's the way to look through godliness. That's the color of God. That's this idea of being able of really looking through and see. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I visited. Moshe knows him. Moshe Morgenstern. We visited Lithuania. I was in a city called Vilna. How did Chassidim end up in Vilna? Don't ask. That's what happened. And we had second. Yeah, we were there. We were in Vilna, and it was a summer. We had a summer camp. It was quite amazing.
How long
And
was this?
a few years ago, before I was married, so it was over 20 years ago. But we were there, and we were there. It was a summer camp, and in a summer camp, listen to this. We had a guy that came in from America, from Bar Park. Moshe knows him. His name is Herschel Ashkenazi. He's a Satmar Chassid, and he has an organization called IBM. What does IBM stand for? Ready for this? International Bris Milah. Anyone that has to have a Bris Milah, you call him up. It's amazing. And within 24 hours, he shows up anywhere around the world, and anywhere around the world he'll show up and he'll practice. And it doesn't make a difference what's the age, as long as he can prove this person is Jewish, he'll come from anywhere around the world, and he'll practice a bris. He's an amazing person, and
our friend's son, he did the bris.
Really?
He's older now. He's like,
but he does. We had people doing a bris. We had a 32-year-old, we had a 16-year-old, we had a baby. We had like I think 12 brisim that day, and I had to be his assistant or whatever. We'll talk about that one time.
So he came to Vilna.
He comes to Vilna. This guy Herschel Ashkenazi, and he told us a story from the summer before. He says this year wasn't so exciting. It was only 12. I said only 12. He said no, it was very nice, whatever. But I'll tell you what happened to me a few years ago. He says right when the current iron was removed, they traveled to Russia, and they came and they were doing brisim by the dozens. People were desperate to associate with their Judaism, and they felt that's what could make them. I can never understand that. I'll be very honest. I could never understand it. He says people were lined up, hoping and wishing and praying and please. And he says they were short on time because you can only have a bris by day, and when it's sunset you have to stop. And he says people were like begging him, please. I never understand it. An older guy shows up, and he says to him, I want to have a bris. Now he censored something's wrong. He censored something. There's something not honest about this. Now, he was scared to do a bris because if you give a bris and then he could prove that he's Jewish, he could make aliyah. Something there wasn't right, and he thought more on like KGB size. Like this guy comes to him and he's like,
it's a trap.
Yeah, what is? And it's not very legal to just start practicing surgeries in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, and he felt something's wrong. And he asked the guy, "Are you really Jewish?" Yes. Your mother Jewish? Your grandmother? Could you tell me some words in Yiddish? What did you eat in Pesach? And the guy is passing the test. He knows everything. Yeah. So eventually, he says, "I don't really know about this. What's your condition like? Like what are you like health wise?" The guy was an older guy. He says, "No, I'm perfectly healthy." He says, "Really sure? Maybe your blood pressure and maybe your heart. This could really endanger you." He's really freaking him out. This could really endanger you having a bris. You're an older person. He says, "No, I'm perfectly healthy." He says, "Let's think again." Eventually, the guy bangs on the table and says, "What do you want?" "I'm a Jew, and let me have a bris." "Well, what's the deal?" He said, "Okay, listen, I have to hear from this guy that he's a Jew." No problem. He practices a bris. When the bris is over, the guy sits up and says, "Now I'm going to confess. Now that it's over, I'm going to confess." He says, "I'm not healthy at all. In fact, I had 3 heart conditions just in the past year." So he says, "So are you crazy? You could have died." He says, I don't care, because I was born Jewish, and my bubby always told me you're a Jew, and I figured if I was born Jewish, I didn't have the merit of living Jewish, at least I should die Jewish." And he went up to have a bris, knowing that he may not walk off. He says, "That's when I saw the neshama. That's when I saw the neshama of a Yid." He couldn't explain to us logically, couldn't explain to us Torah-wise, Kabbalah. He couldn't explain anything what a bris is. He just knew I was born Jewish. My bubby told me you're Jewish. I wasn't able to live Jewish, but even if I die, I'll die Jewish. And that's when you look through a neshama and you see godliness. You remove everything and you look through it just like a window. It has a certain shade. You look through it, and that's what you see. That's what you see when you see a neshama. And that's what Avram teaches us. Avram teaches us, or Hashem teaches us through Avram, that it's not into conditions. Yeah, later on we have to build the next level. The next level, Avram gets his tests and he gets his challenges and he gets his commitments and he gets a lot of things that he has to do. Commitments and commandments and promises, and some of the promises work out and most of them don't work out, and he still believes. But that's later on. The first beginning, what's with the first 75 years of Avram? Irrelevant. Why irrelevant? Hashem chose his neshama. Hashem decided this is what's going to be part of it, and that's the one. So every one of us has this unbelievable neshama that Hashem chose us, and that Hashem looked and pinpointed out. This is going to be the neshama that's going to be the one that's going to bring the spark in the world, and that's why it's such an amazing thing. That's what Avram does. There's no background stories. He didn't choose him because he acted nicely, because he was righteous. He chose him because that's what Hashem decided, that this is the shade that he wants to give to this specific neshama, to this specific yid. I'll just end off this part saying that I saw an amazing letter that someone wrote to Rebbe. Actually, the letter is from the Rebbe writing back to him. And he writes to Rebbe, it seems like he wrote to Rebbe, that I'm writing to you as a Yehudi Chiloni. Chiloni is secular, but the word Chiloni comes from the word Chol, like not holy. So he writes, so the Rebbe writes him a whole answer, and at the end the Rebbe writes to him like this. The Rebbe writes to him, and I'm really apologizing for giving this criticism back, but you refer to yourself as a Yehudi Chiloni. But I have a really hard time hearing that term, and I'll tell you why. Because since Hashem said, "V'atem tiyuli mamlechet kohanim," you will be a nation of priests, v'goy kadosh, and a holy nation and holy people. No individual could call himself chiloni, that he's not holy. We are all holy. Why? Hashem chose us, and that's what makes us holy. Later on, then you have different conditions, different layers. But to somebody just coming and giving this statement, Yehudi Chiloni, I'm not holy. No, you're very holy. Why are you holy? Not because you decided, not because what you did, because Hashem chose your neshama. Hashem chose your neshama, and that's what makes you holy. So that's Avram Avinu. Chaim. I'll tell you something. I was once by like a rabbinical court, a Beis Din. Not that I'm such a big rabbi. They looked for a third person to sit, so they called me in, and they were interviewing an amazing woman that wanted to convert. I'm saying amazing because remember the rabbi was asking different questions, And then the rabbi says, "What is the result of someone that breaks Shabbat? What's the result?" I guess he wanted to see, what it says in the Torah or whatever. So she looks at him, and her eyes fill up with tears, and she says, "Why would you want to do that?" She says, "If you break Shabbat, you get disconnected from godliness. It's really not worth it." And the rabbi, his name was Rabbi Ashkenazi, he was the chief rabbi of Chabad. He started crying. He literally, he was a very emotional person, but she said she was so sincere. She said, "Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to disconnect yourself from godliness?" And he started crying. So afterwards, I asked him, Rabbi, what made you cry? So he says, because it says that anybody that converted stood by Mount Sinai, right? Together with all the souls of all Jews. So anybody that converted, their souls also stood. He says, and I've sat many, many times in rabbinical courts with conversions. I've never seen someone that actually stood next to me. He says, I literally felt like this individual is next to me in Mount Sinai receiving the Torah. He says, it's, like in such a sincere way, she said it. And he literally cried. He says, I know everybody stood by Mount Sinai, but meeting somebody, he said, I felt like a soulmate, like soulmate standing next to me, like we stood next to each other by Mount Sinai receiving the Torah. He says, how could somebody come with such a clear-cut understanding that we don't keep Shabbat because, the benefits, or we don't break Shabbat because some kind of punishments. We keep Shabbat because we want to bind with Hashem. We want to be one with Hashem. We want to be one with the Jewish people that are all keeping Shabbat at that time. Who needs more than that? Who needs more than that? It's such an amazing, basic understanding.